I think it's probably going to be the first time I'm making a video like this. Now, I always try to flame Gamefreak whenever I have the chance on other videos, which is pretty interesting. Before we get right into it, please like and subscribe. That's the best way to support me for free. I might be crashing the waves of algorithm here because my videos aren't performing very well for whatever reason. Maybe I should stop flaming other people, but let's get right into it. Gamefreak. I think they're done. They're cooked. They're finished. Just that simple. That's probably what the title is going to be of this video, and I am just completely done with Game Freak. I think it's time for another company just to take over. There's got to be ways to reinvent Pokemon because the products that they've been giving out, particularly in Generation 8 and 9, just aren't that good. And if you think for the slightest bit that Game Freak could make an actual game outside of Pokemon, you're wrong. You're completely wrong. Remember this? 2019, Little Town Hero? The shit flopped. It was bad. That's how we knew. Game Freak only knew about Pokemon. That's it. That was the first little instance of where Game Freak tried to make an actual game on Nintendo Switch that wasn't Pokemon, and it just completely flopped. Just that simple. So we fast forward a couple months later, and we end up getting Sword and Shield. Oh yeah, you guys remember the infamous tree? Now, at this time, it didn't really bother me about texture graphics because at the end of the day, it was texture, and this was actually a trailer for E3. Remember when E3 was a thing back in Generation 7, technically, because it came out in July 2019. So this was before Generation 8 reveal. And yeah, people were complaining about the graphics of a freaking tree, which to me it was absurd back then. And then I started thinking more and more about it, and then obviously up until the release of Sword and Shield, then we started seeing it was becoming a problem. The lack of really pristine graphics, very hallway slash corridor adventures, lack of a true story, lack of a villain. Because villain in Generation 8, Rose, motherfucker sucked. I mean, god damn, it was hollow. And they kept trying to sell us the wild area or the wild dens. Obviously, open world, we've been wanting that for a while, but how is it an open world when part of the world is open? It just didn't make any sense to me. And in retrospective, Sword and Shield were pretty damn bad. Probably after the 6 months, it got really boring. And obviously, with the introduction of DLC, things got interesting with the re release of new Pokemon. And Sword and Shield, I would say, to be honest with you, the Crown Tundra was pretty fun. But other than that, yeah, Generation 8 to me was a wash. And I feel like we're just going into a repetitive cycle of cutting stuff that people been wanting for a long time, such as difficulty, a battle frontier. Heck, do you remember in Generation 9 if we had a battle tower or even a actual counterpart to it? No, there wasn't. Sword and Shield, we had a battle tower, and that was about it. There wasn't really anything interesting in regards to Sword and Shield as of a post story. Like there was no post story. There's been a lot of stuff that's been cut around Pokemon for the past couple of years at this point. I mean, think about it. Do you remember the peak Pokemon era, which was Generation 3, 4, and 5, compared to the likes of 8 and 9? Like, we have lost Mega Evolutions. They cut off Z moves. Pokemon following us is like, wow. Like, really? Obviously, they did us a little bit of justice when it comes to Scarlet and Violet, albeit it's a little glitchy, every now and then. We don't have a real proper rival. Remember when we used to have Silver and Blue? Y'all remember that? Y'all probably weren't even born. Berry growing. I think we do have berry growing now, but even if I can't remember it, we don't even use it because it's hot garbage. Trainer rematch. This is something I've been asking for a long time. Remember little Timmy on Route 1 when he only had his Rattata, and now all of a sudden he has a 6 Pokemon team, and they're all level 60? That's something I would want. An actual challenge. And of course, an interesting story. I mean, Pokemon stories haven't been that great since Generation 5. I would argue the character development of certain characters in Generation 7 were pretty good. But other than that, I think Generation 5 storytelling was peak Pokemon storytelling. And then obviously now we're going to go into Scarlet and Violet. Now, the biggest argument that I hear that always pisses me off is, well, if Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, according to this marketing sales data, sold 22.5 million copies, then clearly the game must be good, right? No. How? What? You have to take into consideration that people pre-order games. Pre-orders. As soon as you have a week left into the release of a Pokemon game, if you pre-ordered it, it automatically counts as a sale because the Pokemon or Nintendo eShop, I should say, they take away your funds and boom, it counts as a sale. Now, of course, I would say this, and I've always been saying this, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, they're fun games. Don't get me wrong, they're fun games. The biggest issue with such games like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is for some reason they don't quality check their products, which is why we end up having terrible user scores for all these games. And then we start seeing stuff like this: graphical errors, graphical glitches, bugs, software crashes. The game crashes every now and then. Now, obviously, everyone's experience is different. Me personally, the game has only crashed on me once or twice, and that might be because it was prior to the patches. But then when you start having stuff like the Elite Four song looping every 15 seconds, when you start having your riding Pokemon just fall into an abyss that you cannot get out of, you have to restart your game, or when your Pokemon present themselves as a very weird anomaly in the Pokemon overworld, like, come on. That's something that shouldn't be existing in 2022, because that's when the game was released. And it's just, man, I don't know. I'm just very disappointed the way Game Freak themselves have just not been able to adapt when it came to the transition of 2D to 3D. I think actually that might have been the biggest downfall. While we all thought Pokemon going to 3D was a really good thing for Game Freak, at least pushing the needle forward in regards to, futuristic design and potentially having good games, it's just the complete opposite. And that's something where it's like, okay, if they can't do it for the past 4 years at this point, because the mainline series Pokemon games have only been around on the Switch for 4 years, I think it's time to pack it up. Now, I would say Pokemon Legends Arceus was like their only light at the end of the tunnel, but man, the main series games have just been like, they've just been bad, catastrophic, horrific, terrible. You can throw in any word, whatever you want. And now I'm hearing rumors of Game Freak themselves developing a samurai-esque game. It's called Project Bloom. This is probably going under the radars for a lot of you guys, but it's very interesting to see that they're trying to, again, attempt another game that isn't Pokemon. And whether it will flop, most likely it will, because obviously we all know how Game Freak is when it comes to side projects. And another argument that I've heard is that, well, it's because the Pokemon company themselves, they don't give Game Freak enough time to actually develop games. Instead of making it a yearly cycle, they can make it 2 or 3 years. While I could agree with that, the problem with it is that Game Freak doesn't bring in their own resources. They don't bring their own resources. They don't bring in more people to quality assure, quality check. They don't bring more developers. They don't bring more graphical designers. They just use the same team every fucking time. That's the biggest issue. Instead of trying to bring in other experienced people from different companies, like I keep bringing up Monolith Soft because they developed Breath of the Wild. And I'm not sure if they developed Tears of the Kingdom, but they did a pretty good damn job when it comes to that. But again, Game Freak thinks they're just ahead above everyone else and they can just milk the cash cow forever because obviously it's all Pokemon. People buy Pokemon. You can literally make a pile of shit and slap the Pokemon logo on it and people are still going to buy it. That's just the harsh reality when it comes to it. And man, it's just Pokemon in general. Ugh, man, I can't imagine what Generation 10 would be. I can't imagine what Pokemon Black and White remakes will be, even though those have not been officially announced at this point in time yet. But oh man, it's time to pack it up, Game Freak. It's time to really pack it up. I mean, that's it, man. Like, hey, you've been with Pokemon for 30 years, and we appreciate you guys creating Pokemon, but it's time. It's time to pack it up. It's over. Just give this to another company. Sell it for a gajillion dollars. You can live off the rest of your life with that money. I mean, it's generational wealth at this point, and it's like, oh man. Well, let me know what you guys think. You think Game Freak's cooked? I think they are, and most likely some of you guys will say that in the comment section down below. But let me know your opinions. It's your boy Franklin. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Signing out. Peace.